What is up, everybody? Dustin here with Jagged Brush Studios. How are you this evening? Just getting some last-minute adjustments made on the... Because for some reason, OBS does not save my camera settings in between when I use it. And I forget to change them regularly. So, fun times. Alright, so we've got these two minis here that we're going to be working on. They are Scanlan and Pike from the Critical Role line of miniatures. Yeah. I've been working on these Critical Role minis, and I need to get them done. I've got these last two out of one box, and then a whole nother box. I have the Mighty 9 box yet, and then after that, I've got two more, and then I'm done with the Critical Role minis. I think I have a Cadius Clay, I think it is, and somebody else. Not quite sure of the name. I need to check it out. So, all right. So I think we'll probably try to knock both these out tonight. We'll stream for a couple hours. I may or may not get to both of them. So I've got the two of them. We're going to start with Scanlan, and we'll see where we get to with him. They're small, so I figured I could get them both done fairly rapidly, but I'm not sure. Checking on something real quick. Let's see. Just reminding myself of what the general color scheme of Scanlan looks like. So, all right. So first things first, we are going to get some Fleshtone down on this guy. And for that, we're going to start with, we're going to go with a fairly light, so we'll go with Barbarian Flesh. All of the paints that I use tonight, if you've not seen any of my other videos, are going to be made by Army Painter. So, I'll list all of the paints in the description of the live video after I finish. And if you don't remember, to help you if you don't remember what I grab. Just giving these a good mix-up, if that's what you hear in the background. I may take a quick second and try to share this around real quick and see if I can't get a couple people to swing on in. Give me just a second. Share on my timeline. All right. So let's get started with some Barbarian Flesh. Thin it out a little bit. Hope y'all are having a good Thursday. Get my brush a little bit wetter. It's not wanting to cooperate. All right. And get all of our flesh tones here. Like I said, these minis are pretty small, so I'm hoping to be able to knock them out fairly rapidly. if you're here, thanks for stopping by. If you think you know somebody that would enjoy the stream, please feel free to share it. The more the merrier up in here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you're catching this live stream on video on demand through YouTube, or, you know, later, post your questions in the comments and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. So the last time we streamed, I tried to stream some Dragonborn, or some paint on the Dragonborn from the Elder Scrolls Miniatures game, and my internet provider was not cooperating. It was quite frustrating, to say the least. So hopefully this works out a little better for us today. Second coat of Fleshtone going on. If you're not familiar with this, this is Scanlan from Critical Role Podcast. He is a gnome from the podcast. And he is quite the lady charmer. And all right, Banshee Brown. Banshee Brown. Get that shaken up real quick. I hope so too, Dan, because it is quite annoying. We aren't having terrible thunderstorms here right now, so I do hope it lasts. There's not much that's going to be this color on him. His little socks. This miniature is so small, I hope it's not too small for y'all to be able to see on stream. If y'all don't care to, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, share it around. I've mentioned that before, but there's probably people that I can't reach that you can, that might enjoy what we're doing here. And then he's got a little undershirt on that I'm going to get with this. Scanlan. Hey, Jared. Glad you're able to catch a live stream, Jared, after chatting with you on Facebook all the time through comments. All right. I need a little bit of desert yellow. That's cool. Thanks for swinging by. We're going to use this desert yellow on the trim of his pants. I call it trim. He's got like these little pleated areas that, or I guess they're quilted, not pleated, that poke through his pants. How's the sound? Is the music too loud? Is it not loud enough? In my headset, the music is like amazingly loud. But of course, what I hear is different than what you all hear on stream. So I'm just trying to get that music audio dialed in. You can't hear music. Let me know if that's better. Awesome. I didn't post them yet, but I finished the Draugr from that box also. Last night after I posted the skeletons. I'm just hanging on to those pictures for a minute. But there's a sneak peek of one finished. Alright, so just barely hear the music. I don't want the music to drown out my voice, so we'll play around with it through the stream, and there we go. So I'll get better pictures of those up on my page later. Alright, we're going to grab a little bit of Oak Brown. No, we're not. We will grab that, but not just the second. Alright, so for his pants, I'm going to grab some Crusted Sore. We'll get that good mix up because I don't use it very often. I think it seems like I'm getting a hiccup every now and then, but not nearly as bad as the other day. At least YouTube's not screaming at me that I'm not getting enough bitrate through. Alright, so we're going to use this color on his pants. And we're going to have to do this thin. It's probably going to take a couple of layers. Let me take my headset off because the music's too loud. In my ears, at least. I turned the music up just a little bit. I don't know if it's coming through yet. I'm trying to do it incrementally. So this Crusted Sore is a nice deep red. And I accidentally went into one of the quilted folds, so we'll have to fix that in a minute. I don't want them so loud that they overpower my voice, but I want them to be at least there for when I'm not talking. So remember, the tricks with red is that we're not going to try to get complete coverage on the first pass. If you try to do that with red, you're going to end up putting it on way too thick. Okay. Well, hopefully that's the right volume. What I'm going to do afterwards is I'll go back with a finer brush and clean up the yellow areas that I got some red into. It'll be all right. I probably should have done the red first and let the yellow fill it in. But oh well. Perfect. Hopefully that's the case for everybody. You have no music, Dan. I wonder if it's because you're on a phone. Are you on? I'm assuming you're on your phone, Dan. That may be why. There. I guess I just assume everybody keeps their volume at 100% all the time, like my deaf self. Still working with this red color, the Crusted Sore. Yeah, I really should have done the red first before the yellow. Oh well. I'm gonna have a lot of yellow to clean up. I figured I can see the voice one, and I can tell it's a little bit better on the mic mixer, but the music's a little harder to tell with having to stream it as desktop audio, and I'm sure there's another workaround or another way to do it, and I just haven't taken the time to figure it out. So, all right, we got our Crusted Sore color down. This guy's so small, I am going to switch to a bit smaller brush. Because I'm having some issues painting him with my larger brush. So we're going to take some dark sky. His coat's going to eventually be purple, but we're going to base tone it with dark blue first. We'll just leave the sound where it's at for now. Oh, I forgot his hat. His hat's the same color as his pants, so let's do that real quick before I go on to my blue. I'm hoping to be able to get to both Scanlan and Pike today, but I'm not sure. We'll see. See how quickly I can get Scanlan done. And then after this, these are the last two from the Vox Machina box. After this, I have all of the Mighty Nine to paint. Alright, so let that dry for a minute, and then we'll go back and put a second coat on. So while that's drying, I will go ahead and work on his coat. I really like this dark sky color. It's a really deep blue. And like I was saying, his coat's going to eventually be purple, but putting this blue down is going to help give us good coverage for the purple later. The only thing I did to these minis before streaming was Zenithal primed them, which honestly I did a batch of minis all at one time. When I prime, I try to prime a bunch. That way I don't have to fire up the airbrush constantly for priming. And then I only have to clean. Honestly, it's not turning it on and firing it up that bothers me. It's cleaning the darn thing. I hate cleaning my airbrush, even though it's an important part of having an airbrush. I really wish I was better at airbrushing and I could use my airbrush for more of this. Although probably not on this mini. Like these two, Scanlan and Pike, are so tiny as far as miniatures go. I guess because they're gnomes, huh? Yeah, if you can do things in batches when you're working with miniatures in general, that's the best way I've found to do it. So, it saves time. It may not be the most fun way to paint stuff in batches. Like I enjoy doing one-off things every once in a while, but really, batch stuff is the way to go if you can. Alright, so I went over with some of messed up there. Small little gnomes. But you know, from what I've listened to so far, Scanlan has to be one of my favorite characters. And then his hand here needs a second coat of some Fleshtone. Okay. Second coat on the hat. The jacket I'm not too worried about giving it a second coat because it's going to get covered with a good purple. I'm still early. They don't switch characters, do they? I mean, I guess that's spoiler stuff, but I feel like it's been a long time and I'm still early in the campaigns. I'm gonna fix these yellow spots while I'm thinking about it. Just touching back up with the desert yellow into those spots that when I was painting the red pants, got some red in there. I really like Scanlan, and I really like Grog. Grog's one of my favorites. The guy that plays him is just hilarious. I know they switch characters for Mighty Nine. The only thing that kind of surprised me is there's no Dragonborn in this box. Not the brave. Not the brave. What a play on words. Yeah, I'm still working on the Vox Machina campaign. Because usually my painting time is when I listen to stuff like that, but I can't very well listen to the campaign while I'm streaming for y'all. Can I? And then so I went to start listening to it on like my drive to work, and then I use Podbean for my podcasting, and for some reason I couldn't get it to play on there anymore. I think they took it off there. Okay. I'm not sure what's going on, but I was not able to get it to come through on Podbean. Gotcha. That makes sense. Get this last little pantaloon area. Okay. Alright, so we're going to take some Oak Brown. Grab some water real quick. I try to avoid the drama stuff, so I figured it was something having to do with like rights and licensing or anything like that. But you know, it is what it is. So I'm gonna get his loot here with Oak Brown. We're gonna also do the sword hilt, or the sword sheath this color, just because. And we'll get all the leather this color as well. But this Oak Brown really makes a great leather base for you to put some scratches and stuff into it. It's a good dark tone to start with. And remember, when you're painting, that paint goes on lighter than when it dries. So keep that in mind when you're painting. When you apply paint, it's going to dry darker than you initially apply it. So, good tip to keep in mind. Alright, so this is going to be a difficult spot to get. I realize there's a little bit of pants up under here that nobody's going to see, so I'm going to get it the best I can, and if it's not perfect, it is what it is. That's the only thing I don't really like about these minis is they come pre-assembled. And sometimes I like to leave them unassembled when I'm painting them, or at least dry fit them, so that I can take them apart as needed. But, oh well. Alright, we'll get his belt. And we can come back and touch up the blue if we get it into the wrong area. I definitely don't remember any of the actors from the show's names. And that's not because they're not great. It's I've never really remembered actors' names or actresses' names. It's never been something I'm good at. I do have some of the D&D Army Painter sets. I have one. I have the Nolzur's Marvelous Pigment set that comes with Drizzt Do'Urden. It's here somewhere. I've not used it. I did an unboxing on it on my channel, though. If you go back and check out some of my older videos. I need to paint that mini up on stream. Alright, and there's a strap that comes up over his shoulder. Just like so. And it comes down here. Easy to miss. Alright. We're also going to use this. I've not used it, to be honest. I've not used any of the paints that come with that set. Let me find my set real quick and I'll pull it out and compare it. I wonder if it's just a rebranded paint color, which may be why you don't hear people talking about it. I know that a lot of the paints from that set are rebranded Army Painted, like of their regular brand, but some of them are exclusive. So give me just a second and I'll put this down and see if I can. It's right here near my desk somewhere. I just don't have it handy. Not quite sure where I ended up putting it. I moved my paint desk into another room a few weeks back. It may be. I don't know where I put it. I was honestly going to look. So rough iron looks similar, probably. This is a metallic brown. I use rough iron regularly. Actually, I use rough iron a lot of times to base before I do like gunmetal now. Because if you leave it in the edges, it makes it kind of give it a nice true metallic highlight color. Alright, so for the flute, we're going to go with, you know, we'll probably go with this desert yellow for that as well, and then we'll highlight it from there. I'm running out of desert yellow. I need to get some more. So, Jared, the reason that I haven't used many of the other D&D paint sets is that I'm sponsored by Army Painter, and so I don't buy my paints. I produce content to help get the Army Painter name out there, and I tend to stick to the main paint sets because I do a lot of Star Wars Legion stuff. That's my primary paint system, or primary miniature wargaming system that I paint. And the D&D stuff would be kind of odd for that system. It's not a lot of colors that that system would use. Now, I do plan, and it's in my to-dos, that I plan to use that paint set once I find it again. Like I said, I don't know where it went. I'm going to use that paint set to paint the miniature that comes in it. So that anyone who buys that box, anyone that buys that box could just grab it and paint that miniature. Alright, Necromancer Cloak. This is my favorite black alternative. I know my paint mixer's kind of loud, sorry. And this is going to be for his hair. And then we've got a base coated mini. Well, no, I have to do a metallic spot. He's got a belt buckle. I use primarily Army Painter brushes as well, except for, well, this one here is not an Army Painter brush, but the one I'm currently using is using an Army Painter Regiment brush. They work well. And they last a while. Yeah, I never bought any of them. So my first major paint set that I bought, so for the longest time I used just craft paint, well, kind of craft paints. I used the expensive brand of Liquitex, you know, the artist versions. And they worked okay. They're not great. I struggled with them. And so one year for Christmas, I told my wife, she's like, well, what do you want? And I'm like, I want paint, like actual hobby paint. And so she bought me an Army Painter Mega set. Hey, being new to the hobby is okay. I've only painted, well, I mean, I say only. I've been painting for just about 12 years now. And I learn something new every day. I still find techniques that I'm like, hey, that's a really good idea. I'm going to try that. So, don't feel bad. All right, let me check something real quick. Just looking at artwork. Grab some weapon bronze, and that's going to be for his belt buckles and his little sword. Anyway, so my wife bought me the Army Painter Mega set that jumped up my painting game and how well I could paint, like, overnight. It was night and day how well having the appropriate paints worked. And so when Star Wars Legion came out, I had done a bunch of work, and then I reached out to Army Painter and I was like, hey, you know, I don't know if y'all are looking to work together on anything. And met one of the owners of Army Painter at Gen Con, and we worked out some agreements, or just not even agreements. It was just like, yeah, hey, we like what you're doing, and we'd love to work together. So, and I sometimes get some of their products early, kind of give them some feedback on it, and it's been a really great relationship so far. Their media director Adam's an awesome guy, and I've really enjoyed working with them. And they're real down to earth, so when this whole COVID thing kicked off, they they stopped all production of paints out of their Denmark facility and started making hand sanitizer and bottled it into their paint bottles and sent it out to schools and places like that. It was pretty awesome. Honestly, it was an amazing thing. I gave them much props for doing that. Missed his little ear here. Fix this ear over here. And then the flute didn't quite get the coverage I wanted on it, so one more. Cover of Desert Yellow. And that's one base coated Scanlan. Let me see if I can't get the camera to cooperate and get in focus here. Yeah, I don't even have the complete paint set. I have most of their paints. I get them one by one now as I run out. So that's base coated. We're going to give that just a second to make sure that everything's dry. And then we'll start working on the first layer of highlights. Since I'm doing a simpler how to paint, I'm going to I am going to use washes on this, which is not something I do all the time. While we're waiting for that to dry, here's another project I'm working on, another Dragonborn for Elder Scrolls. This one's got his base coat done, and that's it. And this is the base for that guy. The base is pretty much done. Just a sneak peek. All right. So now that we've got that, before we do our washes, what I'm going to do is put all these paints aside. I leave them out till the end, because if I don't, I'll forget what colors I used to do my guide with, or to type out my guide. All right, so we're gonna highlight a couple of areas. And the first color we're going to use to highlight with is going to be Alien Purple. Yeah, I bought that Dragonborn when they announced it. And then shortly I reached out to Modifius a couple months ago, and I said, hey, I'd love to make some content for your stuff. What's the best way to go about getting it? And they said, well, we'll send you some. So Modifius sent me the minis, the box sets, but I had that one already. I'd purchased it. Alright, so alien purple onto the palette. And we're going to thin it out. And then we're going to paint his jacket with it, leaving some of that dark blue hidden in the recesses. And I may leave his interior shirt blue. Like it looks like he's got almost 3 layers of jacket on. So I may just leave that one blue. We'll see how it looks once I get the purple on. Purple works similar to red, so make sure you thin coats, multiple thin coats on purple. Yeah, I did not get one of those, but that's okay, because there's not a whole lot of painting I can do with on it, and I like to paint my minis. I think if you buy the bundle pack from Modiphius, they send it to you from the site. I think that's how you get it. So I know that Scanlan has yellow around the end of his sleeves. I'm going to put that on very last. So the very last thing I'm going to do is to add the purple around the end of his sleeves after I've done washes and everything. Just a second coat of purple to make sure that purple's coming through the way I want it to. I do have enough painted up now to play, now that I have the entire Bleak Barrows box painted. But I figured if I painted the second Dragonborn, if I played it with my son, he wouldn't try to claim being a Dragonborn, and I only have one character painted up, so we need a second one. Hence why the second Dragonborn. Alright, so the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of this Vampire Red. Do I want Vampire or Dragon Red? Let's see. Vampire. Vampire Red. And we're going to 50-50 it with the Crusted Sore for highlights. Oh yeah? He has a Legion army, so he likes Star Wars Legion. I have been contemplating getting the Fallout board game, or not board game, the Fallout miniatures game. I've seen good things. So 50-50 here, Vampire Red, Crusted Sore. And then we'll pick out some highlights. These are very broad highlights, so we're pretty much getting everything except the deepest recesses. Yeah, I've heard of Monpok, both the first edition and the newly released edition. I'm familiar with it. I've not played it. I've seen it played at my old FLGS from back before I moved across the state I'm in a couple years ago, or a couple years. And I know they re-released it with a lot of cool stuff in there. We play Marvel Crisis Protocol. He enjoys that. I've got some miniatures for that. You know, of course, anything Marvel has got kids' attentions, especially young boys. All right. Let's do some, you know, I was contemplating doing some highlighting there, but I think we're good. So let's grab this hand here that I didn't get the coverage I wanted to on the first coat. All right, give that just a second to dry, and then we'll start putting some washes on. I use a separate palette for my washes because you don't want to put washes on a wet palette. They'll soak right through. And soaking through is kind of the opposite of what we want. So wash colors that we're going to use here, we're going to use red tone, purple tone, and soft tone. So soft tone is going to be the kind of the least area. We're going to use soft tone here on the lower part of the legs, whatever that's called. So like the boot area in the socks that he's wearing. We're also going to use soft tone on all of the brown areas. Yeah, I've heard good reviews of the new edition of Monpok. I just have too many miniatures games that I play, so Star Wars Legion is my competitive, like, that's my heart and soul game right there. We're also going to put this into these little quilted areas. So Star Wars Legion is my main love. I'm a gigantic Star Wars buff. I like Marvel Crisis Protocol. It's a good system, but it's not something I would play competitively. We'll get the flute with this. And skin, so if you get it on the hands, it's not a big deal. Because we're going to do skin tone with this soft tone as well. Since we're going for a fairly light skin tone in the end, Flesh Wash is not what I'm going to use, which is what I would normally use. So I'm using soft tone on the skin. We're going to get the face with this. Make sure not to let it pool too much. Get the hair with it too, what the heck. A little brown tone in the hair is not going to hurt anyone. And his shirt, the undershirt with it. Got a little bit heavy on the top of his hands here. Okay. Got a little bit much in his eyes. I think I'm going to skip trying to put eyes on this guy. They're so tiny, I don't know that I could. So we'll probably leave that one be. Alright, so red tone. We don't need much of the red tone, because we're just going to do the pants with this and the hat. So, pants and hat. Just applying red tone on the pants. Yeah, I have one, actually. I have a magnifying headset, but I don't use them very often. And I have it's called a Psycho brush, which is like 2 brush hairs wide. Not a brush I use very often either. It's not super easy to use because the paint dries on it real quick, so you have to be real fast about getting paint to where you want it to. Because the smaller the brush, the faster your paint dries out on the brush. And I'm not sure if everyone knows this, but dry paint on a paintbrush is useless. Alright, purple tone. And we're going to get all of his jacket with this. Everywhere we can. You love the Psycho. I don't have a use for it. I use my insane detail more than I actually... aside from Regiment, the one I use the most is the Master Clash brush. Because it's got a fine enough point that I can do almost the same thing with the Masterclass brush as I can the Psycho. And the Masterclass doesn't dry, the paint stays on there longer. It doesn't dry out as quickly. Alright. I'm going to mute my microphone here for just a second. Because I don't want to blast y'all's ears. And I'm going to use my little trick to dry out my miniatures real quick. So I'm going on mute. I'll be back just a second. Alright, I'm back. And all of our washes are dry. So, adding a hairdryer to my tool bench was an amazing addition. Things dry really quick now. And I can get back to painting. So we're going to drop down to using this Masterclass brush. And getting some highlighting on. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back into our alien purple and we're going to highlight some of our edges of our purple. Focusing on our upturned areas. Yeah, hairdryer was the best $15 tool I added to my tool bench. Alright. And then we're going to go we're not going to go into our in-between color on the red. We're just going to go directly with the vampire red. And red is one of those that's really guilty of drying much darker than it initially goes on. So when you're painting, you'll apply this nice bright red and you're like, oh, that's going to look awesome. And then it dries and you're like, hey, wait a minute. It's really dark. Especially if there's a darker color underneath the red. Because red has generally less pigment than other colors. So we're applying this red to all the areas that are kind of turned up a little bit. And focusing on the upper areas there. And when you're doing your highlighting like this, make sure you use thinner paints. Alright. We're going to go back into our Banshee Brown. And we'll bring our shirt back from the muddled mess it became with the wash. That's the word I'm looking for. And we'll work on bringing some of our socks back real quick. Just the outsides. Leave the insides that darker color. So the front and outsides. And then I'm going to go back for another coat of the Banshee Brown in here. Adjust my camera down a little bit so that I can stay on stream easier. There we go. Much better. Alright, we're going to pick up some of this desert yellow. And we're going to go touch some of these quilts back up in here. Try to leave the recessed lines on the quilted areas in the pleats, or in the inside where the pant slits are, whatever they're called. So just try to hit the large portions of the quilted areas. Alright. And a little bit of oak brown onto the shoes. Honestly, you'll probably have to go with a lighter color to really get any kind of result from it, but it's a good starting point. And all of that. And then we'll hit the lute in a couple areas. Alright. And then we'll go back into our Barbarian Flesh, and we're going to bring back some of our fleshy areas. So, nose, forehead, cheekbones. He has a really expressive face, so we want to try to make sure we accentuate that. And we will do that by going through a lot of different flesh tone colors. So one way to really make your miniatures look better is to focus on getting your flesh tones right, because that might distract from some of the areas that you're struggling with. However, a model that has poor flesh tones is going to just look generally poor all around. So if I had to give one area that I recommend people improve on is really focusing on flesh tones to begin with. And then once you've got those down, focus on the rest of the areas, because flesh tones can be really hard. I'm not like a display quality flesh tone painter. I mean, they use like purples and blues and reds and stuff, and there's just subtle ones, and I'm not that yet. I consider myself a tabletop quality, or a generally high-end tabletop quality painter that's painting so that it looks good on the table so you can play with it. I have done a couple display pieces in the past. And if you'd like to see those, they're available to see on my Facebook. There's a Luke Skywalker carrying Yoda in a backpack, and then a Darth Vader who's holding his helmet off his head and staring at it. And I call it the humanity of Vader, because it looks like he's kind of staring into, you know, his helmet, wondering who he is as a person. And Vader's one of my favorite Star Wars characters for the reason that he does make a turnaround at the end. And so he kind of follows the whole arc of hero to villain. And at one point plays all of that, each role. Alright, another coat of the Vampire Red. Focusing on the highest areas. Alright, and then into Desert Yellow, also for our flute here. Flesh tones and eyes can be very difficult. I do have a trick for eyes. They're just not in this stream, but I did it in... I've done it in almost every other live stream I've done. If you see a character with a face, then I did eyes on it usually. This one's too small. It would be exercise in futility. I did a paint guide on Operative Luke for Star Wars Legion that I have a really good guide on how to do eyes on there. So if you're interested, that might be the place to go. And the other thing is his... what color to make the bridge of his lute? We'll go with yellow. And the strings. So I'm using the side of my brush to get the strings the color I want. And using a little bit thicker paint than I normally would. And what I'll do is, if I fill in the little gaps, that's okay, because I'll come back later and I'll hit it with another wash just to bring back those deep recessed details. Grab some oak brown and touch up where I got some desert yellow onto the lute. There we go. Fixed. All right. Let's see if I can get up right under his nose. This dude is tiny. Tiny, tiny. I realized as I pulled him back a little bit that there were some areas on the face I just wasn't happy with yet, as far as this highlight. Okay. Alright, so we're going to pull out our next tones of colors. So our next step up for this is going to be, for Fleshtone, is going to be Elven Flesh. And we're going to focus just on the flesh for a second. rest of the mini will come about quick. We don't need much Fleshtone on that one. And what we'll do is we'll grab some of the Elven Flesh, pull it off to the side, and about an equal amount of the Barbarian Flesh, and make a 50-50 mix. In Fleshtones, one of the keys is to, again, work with really thin layers. Because it'll help them blend. And I'm going to focus on cheekbones and forehead here. And the chin, it juts out really far on this guy, so. Cheekbones, forehead, and nose, I should have said. And then on the hands, get the fingers. And the thumb. And then the wrist area here on this other hand. And I'm just doing areas that are perpendicular or parallel to the ground. That's the word I meant, parallel. So, really focusing on hands and face. No, I don't. We're going to leave that area alone. Alright, and then since we are working with such thin paint, we can just go ahead and grab a pure Elven Flesh. And really try to focus on the tip of the nose here. He has a couple of cheekbones that jut out. Right up here above his right eye and the very tip of his chin. And then his thumb will hit the joints. We're going to get the knuckles. And then here we'll get a very small spot on this top of this arm and across the back of the knuckles on this other arm. And that's it on the flesh. So, you know what? I'm actually going to do the whole cheekbone. I think it just is going to look better. Yeah. Remember, it's going to dry just a little bit darker than it seems. And then the last trick for Scanlan is to go into some of our Necromancer Cloak. And he has really well-defined eyebrows. So try to paint some minuscule eyebrows on there. You definitely don't have to do this. I'm actually worried I'm going to mess up his Fleshtone doing it, but I've already started and said I was going to do it. So one down. Two down. Happy with it. That's that little area where I went over. So we'll take some of the mid-tone and touch that. Perfect. Alright. Alright, and then for the flute, I'm going to go ahead and highlight that while I'm thinking about it. We're going to grab 50-50 Banshee Brown and Desert Yellow. Get the top here. All right. And then now that those are taken care of, I'm waiting to do my purple highlights. So I'm kind of doing a few different highlights at one time. Like I'm focusing on one area before moving on to another now. which is something once I get to my highlighting I tend to do, is I like to finish one area of highlights before I move on to the other. So what I'm mixing up now is some Mars Red. And we're going to put a little bit of that on my palette. It's not a color I use very often. And what we'll do is we're going to 50-50 some of that into some Vampire Red. If they touch, it's not a big deal. Thin it out. And we're going to hit just some very small highlights on Scanlan this way. Seems like I'm getting some streaming hiccups now. Something that I haven't had for the night. Cool. Sorry about the hiccup there. I saw YouTube finally screamed at me and said, we're not having enough bandwidth coming through. I think my ISP likes to start playing games with their connections at 10:30. It seems to be consistent that that's about when things go south. Alright, it's not going to take much of that red to really make it kind of pop, so just that one layer should be okay. And then we're going to go with a very small amount of Mars Red. Just pick out some folds in some places. Really focus on bringing some folds out of his pants. And the top of the hat here. Perfect. All right, so for my highlight for my loot, I'm going to take some of this desert yellow. Thank you. We'll go 50-50 into some of this oak brown here. And this will make a good leather color to highlight with. And get the edge of his loot here. And his sword. The sword that, if you're familiar, Scanlan doesn't use often. At least not in the beginning. And then we'll go into a little bit more of that desert yellow and mix it into our color, just to bring out another bits of highlight. And just pick a couple areas to highlight with it. Not go overboard. All right. The last one that we need to do is his shoes, and we can just go with our highest tone on that, and we're just going to add a little bit to the toes since they're turned up. Just make sure it's not so thin that it's pooling. And then onto our purple. So for our purple highlight, we're going to go with some orc blood. Get that mixed up. It's not a color I use often, so it's probably separated pretty well. And then we're not going to 50-50 this, we're just going to work with some real thin colors. And we're going to focus right on the edges of his jacket. And then on the top of the sleeve. On the collar. On the top of the sleeve over here where he's got his arm up in the air. Basically pick out anything that stands out with this. I said last highlight, I lied. And then we're going to get a little bit brighter on the corner of the jackets down here. I have a couple more highlights that I just realized. With this color, if you do a couple of coats, you'll get your highlight that you're looking for out of it. All right. We're going to go into our Necromancer Cloak. I'm going to grab a little bit of Banshee Brown and lighten that, and that's going to give us a little bit of a gray color for his hair. We're going to hit his ponytail here on the top, and his hair across the top of his head, or the front of his face. And then down his sideburns as well, on this one side. It's like, almost looks like he's got some really long sideburns, so. Like a good gnome should. All right. And I realized something. I need to get the lip of this flute on this side. And then the last thing I want to do is grab some Spaceship Exterior. And I want to throw a highlight onto his shirt, the undershirt. Because it's looking real muddy right now. I also want to, I don't normally use white to lighten colors for highlighting, but I'm going to do that for this blue, this dark blue. And get the collar. And just grab a little bit more white. And really pick that collar out a little bit, give it some contrast. Really need Scanlan to be eye-catching. Alright, last step for me on this guy is I have some black that I was working with earlier. Grab some of that. This is just a standard matte black. It's actually a craft black I'm working with, but it doesn't matter for what I'm doing, and I'm going to paint the base black. And what I will do after this, hold on, what I'll end up doing after this off camera is, once I'm sure everything's dry, I'll spray a coat of matte varnish through my airbrush on it. It'll help kill some of the shine from, I'm going to get some new paint because this stuff dried a little bit more than I expected it to, and it's clumping on me. Spray some matte varnish through my airbrush, and that'll help kill the shine from the washes. As soon as I get this base on, I'll try to get him up for the camera to see. And it'll probably take a couple coats of this as it dries. But once I get the first coat out, I'll be able to hold him up. Alright. That, as soon as I get this camera in focus the way I would like for showing off a miniature, is one completed Scanlan. It'll look better in the photos. This is not the best for showing off a completed mini like this, but there we are. Let's see, it's almost 11 o'clock at night. Do I feel up to starting Pike? Considering Pike is a whole lot of white. I don't know. May have to put Pike off for tomorrow night and just change this to Scanlan only. Let's get the second coat of the black on there and then make a decision on that. I know it says Pike and Scanlan. But it took me an hour and 45 minutes to get Pike done. Not Pike. Why am I saying Pike? It took me an hour and 45 minutes to get Scanlan done. And I don't know that I have that kind of time to give to Pike right now. So I think what I am going to do is probably call it a night there. I'll wait for this to dry, get my coat of matte varnish on there, and then do a separate video for Pike. So anyways, that's my step-by-step guide for painting Scanlan from Critic. Yeah, I'm going to do Pike for another night. I can work on like another one of these minis. I have some base coats on, like this other Dragonborn, but I just don't have time to start another mini. But this is how I paint Scanlan. If you like what you see, please hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell if you'd like to be notified when I go live. Been going live much more frequently. And I appreciate you all hanging out with me tonight. I'm going to wait for this to dry. I'll get some matte varnish on it, and then I'll have pictures up on my Facebook. So thanks for hanging out, everyone. Have a good evening.